So Stephenville, Texas, and Granbury, Texas meet Jamie Winship. Jamie, you're going to be
Mhm.
talking to the town, the first responders in our area, and educators, school administrators, teachers, people in the school department. So, um, for all who don't know Jamie, Jamie is the author of Living Fearless, Exchanging the Lies of the World for the Liberating Truth of God. And his wife, Donna, and him are co-founders of Identity Exchange, the company, and Identity Method, and they provide training and consulting in the transforming power of living fearlessly in your true identity. They've worked with professional sports, businesses, governments, law enforcement, nonprofit, etc., and the list goes on, I'm sure, Jamie.
Mhm.
So, Jamie, you were a distinguished law enforcement officer in the Metro DC area and then worked with the government overseas for 30 years in high conflict, areas, the most dangerous in the world for 30 years. And now you're back. And just a cool resource I wanted to point out to people who may be looking at you and Don is you've recently rolled out a resource called Finding Hope in Depression.
Mhm.
Really a neat, free online video with some exercises at findinghopeindepression.com. So thanks for doing that. That's really cool. So all this to say, Jamie and Don are going to come to Stephenville and Granbury, Lord willing, on October 1st and 2nd. So Jamie, we're hoping to get you in front of a few groups of people, first responders, the communities, and the school, people in the school districts. So what's on your heart as you come down for, what would you want to talk to those groups about?
Yeah. Thanks. Thanks. Yeah. I mean, so I came from law enforcement through law enforcement, and 5 years into the police department, got called in to be interviewed by the State Department, and the State Department interviewer's question to me was, "How was I doing in the police department? What I was doing? How was I working the cases the way I was working them?" Because I was doing something that he said he knew I didn't learn in the police academy,
Mm,
which means if I didn't learn it in a police academy, I probably didn't learn it in public school either. And so he wanted to know if I could articulate how I was initiating cases, working cases, and closing cases. And so once I explained, and at the time that I was being interviewed, I was 28 years old. So I wasn't that experienced, but what I was doing was innovative.
mm,
And so for educators and for law enforcement, really for any organization, the highest goal you want in your people, whether it's what you're producing like a school or what you're hiring like a law enforcement agency, or any government agency, you want high resiliency individuals. That's
mm,
what you're looking for. A high resiliency individual um, is hard to find.
mm,
And you want a high resiliency individual is innovative. They can
mm,
be innovative. And the thing about innovation, and this is just a fact, no innovation can occur in the human brain without contemplation
mm,
first, right?
mm,
So if you're not teaching people serious levels of contemplation, they're not going to innovate. They'll only imitate what's seen or known already, which just creates compulsive repetition, and the same problems in every organization continue year after year after year,
yeah.
which is what we see. It's what we see it in education, we see it in law enforcement, we see it in government policy. It's the same mistakes made over and over again, and it causes more and more fragmentation in the school, in the community, in the government, all of that, which we're all watching happen in the world all the time. So what we need are innovators. Innovators have to be experts in contemplation. And so we need to train in contemplation. What is that? How it's the creative process in individuals. So a high resiliency individual is also innovative. So when you study what is the definition of a high resiliency individual, there's lots of good studies on it. There's a good study of Navy SEALs that said the 5 characteristics of innovation are: the person only operates in the present tense. They
Mm,
always are working in an open, flexible state of mind. They only pay attention to discriminatory detail. They are able to shift paradigms whenever necessary, which is
mm,
a very hard thing to find in a
mm,
person. And whenever they think they're going to fail, they move to a higher level of motivation called joy.
uh-huh,
Now, if you could find or produce that kind of person, our culture would look completely different. So here's the challenge. You can create a high resiliency individual who's dangerous, because a high resiliency person just means they're tough and they're
mhm,
capable of handling pressure and stress.
mm,
But as we've seen in special forces and in the military, where the suicide rate is 11 a day, the high
mhm,
resiliency alone is not enough.
mm,
So what's missing is wholeness. So
mm,
what we teach everywhere we go is wholeness and
mm,
resiliency, because a resilient person who's not whole is dangerous. But a person who's whole is organically resilient. So wholeness means that the truth of their being, or the truth of their authentic self, matches the way they live their life. There's no
mm,
fragmentation. My true identity is how I live my life. What we see most of the time in culture is some sort of false identity or shadow identity that's based in trauma and coping mechanisms, trying to survive in a traumatic world. That's
yeah,
that's mostly what we are seeing happen, and it produces conflict.
yeah,
So what we're teaching is, what is the process that can be learned
mm,
from elementary school on, in the police academy, in special forces training, is the process of moving from fragmented, separated
mm,
self to wholeness,
mm,
which just means I'm in unity with the truth of who I am, and that's how I'm living my life.
mm,
And that wholeness produces people who are resilient. They're flexible, they can shift paradigms, they're not afraid to fail. That's what it produces. And so our courses and our training is, how do I move into wholeness? How does the wholeness work into resiliency? And how does, in that whole process, produce levels of contemplation or mindfulness that make us innovative? So when I was interviewing with the State Department, they gave me a real life scenario they were working that they couldn't resolve with all of their experts. And so here I am at 28, and they said, "What would you do?" And because I wasn't afraid of making a mistake in what I said to this official, I understood my own identity. All I did was I contemplated for a minute the situation that they were in. I thought through it in the prefrontal cortex, not in
mhm,
the amygdala where you operate in fear. And in the prefrontal cortex, where all humans imagine and dream and envision and create, I came up with a scenario. Very Took me 20 minutes, and I presented it to him, and he said, "You're hired."
mm,
That's a 28. So what I'm saying, if for a person who's interested in being innovative in their career,
mm,
who's interested in not just imitating others, but actually creating new ways of thinking about law
mm,
enforcement, new ways of thinking about education, new ways of thinking about governance, you have to work on wholeness and resiliency.
yeah,
And finally, at the core of that is identity,
yeah,
because in science, according to science, all living systems only have one organizing principle, and that's identity. There is no organizing principle in any living system except identity. And if
mm,
that identity is correct, the living system is reciprocal, it's open, it can adjust, it works for the benefit of other systems, like a cell. But when the cell is corrupted, it becomes cancer, and it turns inward. It becomes a closed system and parasitic, and
mm,
it devours the other cells around it.
wow,
So when we look at our world, we're looking at a world that's cancerous.
mhm,
It's a world that's devouring other parts of it,
mm,
and we see no end, and we have no solution to it. The solution is individual wholeness and
mm,
resiliency, that's then spread out into a community of wholeness and resiliency. And in that position, humans can resolve anything. We know
mm,
we can. We can solve any problem, but we can't do it when we're fragmented and self protecting and self promoting, because we don't know who we really are. So that's what we teach.
Oh, wow. Man, this is and that'll work that same thing is across the boards for whoever you're in front of. It's fantastic. Okay.
That's great.
Okay.
Yep.
Awesome. We're looking forward to it. October 1st and 2nd. For more information on these events, you can go to blessedcommunities.org and then, to support and to really look forward, and we'll update the schedules and where Jamie and Donna will be and those type of things, and hopefully get you in front of them. So, Jamie, thank you. We're looking forward to it. Thanks for
Yep.
coming down. So.
Sure.